day. My name's Father Jim Fleming. I work here at Ignatius House. I'm on the pastoral team at this Jesuit retreat house in Atlanta. Today's topic is discerning God's dream for us. Discernment in Ignatian prayer can be defined in many ways, but what it is not, I think, is decision-making, although it can be used in decision-making. It might be better thought of as considering the horizon of our lives, and then on that horizon, we look for the presence of God. When we move carefully, then, and prayerfully toward God, discernment is more about direction, I think, than decision. Some decisions will move us closer to God, and some will not. If you hang around Jesuits long enough, or Jesuit institutions, you'll no doubt hear the expression, finding God in all things. Well, I think we might be wise to follow Pope Francis's lead and use the phrase, in all things, seek God. It's just as likely that Ignatius said, in all things seek God, as it is that he said, finding God in all things. The difference here is the seeking. In all things, seek God. I think that's a helpful way to understand part of what discernment is. In all things, like that horizon of our life, look for God. Then we move toward God, toward the light. We keep a record, sometimes written, sometimes just in our heads, of the patterns we notice in these movements. We begin to understand our particular way of interacting with God and God's particular way of interacting with us. We come to understand various aspects of God's dream for us. Discernment might be thought of as considering God's dream for us and acting in ways, moving in directions that will help fulfill that dream. The language of trying to discover God's will for us comes with a lot of baggage. So it can be, I think, refreshing to use the language discovering God's dream for us. I first came across the use of this concept of discerning God's dream for us in a book written by Margaret Silf in the mid-90s. Ignatius does, of course, offer some guidelines for discernment in the spiritual exercises. He offers 14, appropriate for those of us new to the spiritual life, and then 8 more guidelines. Again, he calls them rules for discernment, for those of us who might be further along the spiritual path. In that second set, there's one guideline that I think is useful for all of us to consider, no matter our comfort level with the process of Ignatian discernment. In the exercises, Ignatius says, good angel, that is a good spirit in the soul, touches the soul sweetly, lightly, and gently. It's an indication that it is God, sweetly, lightly, and gently. Ignatius says, like a drop of water that enters into a sponge. Whereas a bad spirit touches the soul sharply and with noise and disquiet, as when a drop of water falls on a stone. God's dream for us, God's presence on the horizon of our lives, will be more likely sweet, light, and gentle. It's a great guideline for discerning God's presence in our lives, especially when we look upon the horizon of our own life. Pope Francis, again, in an article that appeared last year in La Civica Cattolica, made a helpful observation regarding Ignatian discernment. He said, this type of prayer is not shaped by discussion, but by discernment, which of course presupposes discussion as part of the process. The mystical dimension of discernment, he says, never defines its edges. It does not complete the thought. We are people, he says, whose thought is incomplete. And in the sense of being engaged in open-ended thinking. A fruitful thought should always be unfinished in order to allow space for subsequent development. Over time, we learn not to expect absolute certainties about everything, which he says is a symptom of an anxious spirit. Ignatian discernment is a kind of thinking that allows you to navigate conflict without being trapped in it. Today, I'll give the last word to the Sisters of Notre Dame, who produced a moving prayer in discernment that goes like this. Walk with me, good and loving God, as I journey through life. May I take your hand and be led by your Spirit. Fill me, inspire me. Free me to respond generously to your call. For I believe you desire my deepest joy, and it is only in your company that my soul will be satisfied and my life will find its meaning and purpose. Amen. Thank you for joining us. Please come and visit us in person at Ignatius House here in Atlanta. Peace.